My name is Celeste Rowan, 38 years old. I never thought my life would bend toward a wedding aisle, not because I didn't want it, but because the better part of my adult years had been spent breathing courtrooms instead of fresh air, speaking in depositions instead of conversations, watching colleagues marry, divorce, and remarry while my life ticked forward in billable hours. My family's law firm had shaped me like clay pressed into a mold. My father had founded it, my mother had sharpened it, my sister still polished contracts inside it. I'd grown up watching legal briefs instead of cartoons, negotiating curfews like settlement agreements, and learning how to hold my voice steady even when my heart trembled. And in the middle of it all, I forgot what it meant to build a personal life. By the time I looked up, birthdays had blurred, relationships had fizzled, and I was almost 40. Still single, still grinding. I wasn't desperate, but I was tired. Tired of shallow texts, of first dates that felt like interviews, of men who shrank when they realized I carried both ambition and loyalty like armor. I wasn't looking for fireworks anymore, just steadiness. A voice that didn't shout, a presence that didn't drain. That was when Natalie, an old friend who had married through unconventional means herself, messaged me out of the blue. "You should try this," she wrote, sending me a link. "It's not an app, it's a real event." I almost laughed when I clicked. A private matchmaking mixer for professionals over 35, hosted by a boutique agency downtown. The word sounded clinical, like filing for romance through a broker, but curiosity gnawed at me harder than cynicism. 2 weeks later, I was standing in front of my mirror in a navy silk blouse and tailored pants, reminding myself to smile in a way that didn't look like I was cross-examining the world. The mixer took place at a rooftop bar, wrapped in glass and warm string lights. The crowd was polished, nervous, sipping cocktails with names like Summer's Verdict, subtly scanning for rings or titles. I had barely settled near the bar when a man approached. "First time?" he asked, his voice steady. I nodded. "You?" "Yeah, hopefully last." His smile was calm, not forced. His name was Daniel, mid-40s, a construction project manager. No flashy watch, no empty bravado, just a sort of quiet maturity that felt oddly grounding. He asked thoughtful questions. He didn't dominate the conversation. He didn't ask me what kind of law I practiced, which in itself felt like mercy. Instead, we leaned against the railing, city lights flickering below us like a constellation, and talked for hours. When his text arrived the next day, I didn't overthink. I just smiled. Our first real date was dinner in Beacon Hill, then a walk along the river, then brunch that Sunday. He was consistent. He talked about wanting to settle down, about building a life that felt slower, steadier, about a wife who would stay home, maybe care for his parents as they aged. I didn't correct his assumptions. I didn't mention the avalanche of case files that swallowed my nights, or the Harvard diploma framed in my office. I simply said I helped out at the family firm. Not a lie, just strategically vague. For the first time in years, I felt safe. Not thrilled, not electrified, safe. That night, I told myself not to get swept away, but when my mother raised a brow after meeting him and murmured, "He's polite, naive maybe, but harmless," I let myself believe she might be wrong. 6 weeks later, Daniel proposed. Simple, over coffee. "You calm me," he said, holding out a ring. "I want to build a life with you." I said yes. The weeks that followed blurred into fittings, guest lists, menu tastings. We found a beautiful estate outside the city. Exposed brick, soft gardens, the kind of place where June sunlight seemed to spill like honey across the lawn. On the surface, everything was a dream. But dreams have hairline cracks. The first time our families met, it was obvious. My parents arrived, dressed like arbitration was imminent, while Daniel's parents shuffled in wearing sweatshirts, arguing about parking. His mother, Carol, looked me over with a smile that felt like a measuring tape. "You're very polished," she said, almost like a warning. "Thank you," I replied, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "I hope you're not too busy to cook. My Warren can't stand store-bought food." I started to answer, but my own mother cut in smoothly. "Actually, Celeste is an excellent cook, but we order in when we're tired of perfection." The air shifted like a chessboard mid-move. Carol's smile didn't falter, but something behind it tightened. My father, sharp-eyed, said little. My sister Rachel smirked, storing every word away. That night, my mother pulled me aside. Are you sure? They're not horrible, I said. Just different. They're not your problem now, but they will be. I tried to ignore the unease pressing at my ribs. The night before the wedding, I stayed at my parents' house. Rachel brought champagne. My mom pressed my gown. We laughed like it was a sleepover. You ready to be someone's wife? Rachel teased. I'm ready to rest, I said. To not argue every day. You don't argue, she corrected. You cross-examine. The morning of the wedding was golden. The bridal suite bathed in light. Staff brought pastries. My dress hung like a cloud. Rachel adjusted my veil. My mother sat near the window, flipping through the program, calm as a general before battle. You look beautiful, she said, not glancing up. I'm not nervous, I lied. You shouldn't be. It's not court. You can say no if you want. I'm not saying no. She looked at me then, long and steady, like she was searching for cracks. And then the knock came, sharp, too sharp. Rachel started to rise, but the door swung open before she reached it. Carol and Warren stood there in full formal wear, smiling like intruders who believed they owned the room. The air snapped cold. My mother didn't move. Rachel froze by the vanity. I, in my gown, felt suddenly like prey caught in a spotlight. Carol stepped in without waiting. We need a quick word with Celeste before the ceremony, she said, brushing invisible lint from her skirt. This isn't the place, my mother answered, her voice low, dangerous. Oh, come now, Carol said cheerfully. It'll just take a minute. Family matters. Warren followed behind her, nodding politely, smugly. My pulse quickened, my hands trembled, but I forced my voice to stay calm. Is something wrong? I asked. Carol's smile widened. Nothing at all, dear. We just want to make sure expectations are aligned before things are made official. Behind her polite tone, I felt it. The trap about to spring. Carol folded her hands like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence. Here's the thing, Celeste. After the ceremony, you'll be moving in with us. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Excuse me? Warren stepped forward with the weight of someone already accustomed to being obeyed. Daniel's brother moved out years ago. We've got plenty of space. It makes more sense for you to live with us, especially since you don't have children or a demanding job. Why waste money on a condo? My mouth went dry. The bridal suite's air suddenly felt heavy, as if the light itself had turned hostile. My mother rose slowly from her chair, her expression perfectly neutral, which in her language meant danger was close. We already leased a penthouse downtown, I managed, keeping my voice level. That was the plan. That's canceled, Carol said briskly. No need for that anymore. And since you'll be under our roof, we expect a reasonable monthly contribution. $3,000 should cover it, plus holiday bonuses, of course. The words landed like stones, each heavier than the last. Rachel choked out a laugh, half in disbelief, half in outrage, but Carol ignored her. And because you'll be home during the day, Warren added smoothly, we'll need you to walk Bella twice, morning and afternoon. She's our beagle, very anxious if her schedule isn't kept. The absurdity nearly made me laugh, but fear kept it buried in my chest. My hands trembled against the folds of my gown. Before you protest, Carol said, lifting her chin. We're only saying this now because once the ceremony happens, there's no backing out. Better to be clear up front. It wasn't a conversation, it was an ambush. My mother stepped forward, her voice soft but sharp as glass. So, just to be clear, you are seriously suggesting my daughter give up her independence, her home, her career, so she can walk your dog and pay rent in your house? That's the agreement, Warren said, his tone infuriatingly casual. I swallowed hard, forcing words out. Does Daniel know about this? Carol's eyes flashed. He's our son. He trusts us. If he disagreed, he would have said something. The silence in that moment was worse than shouting. It was confirmation. Daniel knew, and he hadn't stopped them. My mother let out a quiet, incredulous laugh. You barged into her bridal suite with demands and didn't think this might be perceived as hostile? It's not personal, Carol replied, waving her hand as though brushing dust. It's just how we do things. Rachel, unable to hold back, muttered under her breath, Unbelievable. I looked down at my hands, pale against the satin of my dress, my heart hammered, my chest tight, but somewhere deep, a line snapped. The future they were painting, a cage disguised as tradition, spread before me in vivid detail. Mornings spent walking their anxious beagle, evenings handing over money I'd earned, my law degree gathering dust while my autonomy rotted. Something inside me clicked. No, I said. My voice was quiet but final. Carol blinked. What? I don't want this, I said, straighter now, firmer. Not the dog, not the rent, not the marriage that requires it. You're excusing yourself? Warren scoffed. I'm walking away, I replied. Carol's smile fractured, her voice rising. You think you can embarrass us and get away with it? You barged in here and embarrassed yourselves, Rachel snapped. You'll regret this, Carol hissed. We'll sue for damages, we'll ruin your reputation. You're welcome to try, my mother said, stepping closer, her eyes like steel. But I should warn you, our entire family are attorneys. And if you'd like to test coercion law today, go ahead. The silence was electric, heavy with the weight of unspoken threats. I reached for my mother's hand, and she placed her palm against my back, steady, guiding. Let's go, she whispered. Rachel grabbed my veil, her jaw set like a soldier's. Together, we walked out, leaving Carol and Warren stranded in the bridal suite like actors whose play had been canceled mid-scene. The world outside the suite seemed blurred. My dress swished against my legs, every step echoing the choice I'd just made. Somewhere down the hall, violins warmed up for a ceremony that would never happen. I thought of Daniel waiting by the altar, his silence ringing louder than any vow he could have spoken. We didn't stop moving until we reached the car. My sister's hands shook as she started the engine, but her eyes burned with fury. My mother sat rigid in the back seat, her phone already in her hand. You're really not doing it, Rachel said, voice low, almost awed. I can't, I whispered, pressing my palm against my chest as if to calm my pounding heart. Not like this. Not when he let them. The rest of the words died in my throat. Back at my parents' house, silence followed us like a shadow. I peeled off the dress in my old bedroom, my body trembling from more than just exhaustion. On the nightstand, Rachel's phone buzzed. She picked it up, then froze. Celeste, she whispered, her eyes widening. You need to see this. I leaned over. The screen showed a video recording. Rachel explained quickly. She had left her phone on the vanity earlier, accidentally recording. It had captured everything: Carol's demands, Warren's smug agreement, my stunned silence. For a moment, none of us breathed. My mother leaned closer, watching the screen with razor-sharp focus. Keep that safe, she said. Rachel's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. Oh, I will. And in her eyes, I saw it. The storm that hadn't yet broken. The news of the canceled wedding spread faster than wildfire. By the time we reached my parents' house, guests were already whispering, speculating why the ceremony had never begun. The estate staff scrambled with unanswered questions, and Daniel's family prowled the grounds, trying to maintain dignity, while suspicion clung to them like smoke. Daniel called that evening. His number lit up my phone as I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, hair still pinned, makeup smeared, my gown folded into a heap on the floor like the corpse of a dream. I swear I didn't approve any of that, he said as soon as I answered. His voice was desperate, strained. But you didn't stop it, I replied, cutting through his excuses. You let them take over. You gave them permission with your silence. I didn't know they were planning that, he insisted. I thought you understood how my family works. I thought you'd be flexible. My throat tightened, but no tears came, only exhaustion. You lost me the second you stood behind them instead of beside me. Silence stretched. Then his voice cracked. I didn't want to lose you. You already did, I whispered, and hung up. I blocked his number that night. Rachel's recording sat in her phone like a loaded weapon. She didn't intend to use it, at least not at first. But when the wedding guests grew restless, demanding answers, she made a decision. While I changed clothes and my mother called to cancel vendors, Rachel marched to the estate's AV booth. Trust me, she told the staff as they tried to stop her. This needs to be seen. Moments later, the reception hall dimmed. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Then the screen lit up. There I was, standing in my gown, pale and stunned. Carol's voice rang sharp. After the ceremony, you'll be moving in with us. Gasps echoed. Warren's smug tone followed. $3,000 a month should cover it, and you'll need to walk Bella twice a day. The room froze. You could hear forks clatter against plates, whispers slicing through the silence. And then Rachel's voice came through the speakers, steady, resolute. There will be no wedding today. Thank you for understanding. Chaos erupted. Some guests stormed out, muttering about disgrace. Others stayed, wide-eyed, watching the train wreck unravel. Carol tried to unplug the system, but it was too late. The truth had spilled into the open, and nothing could put it back. I wasn't there to see it, but the stories reached me by nightfall, through cousins, friends, even the florist who texted me, "Best non-wedding ever. Proud of you." The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table in a t-shirt, clutching burnt coffee my father had brewed. The silence was heavy, but not suffocating. It was full, like a pause between storms. My mother walked in carrying a yellow folder and set it gently in front of me. "What's this?" I asked. "Breakdown of what they owe us," she said. I flipped it open. The total was brutal. Venue cancellation fees, catering, florists, makeup deposits, transportation, all of it. "You're really going to make them pay?" I asked. She arched one brow. "You think we're letting them walk away clean?" Her tone left no room for debate. That afternoon, I signed the demand letter. A courier delivered it by hand to Carol and Warren's doorstep. By noon the next day, their lawyer was on the phone, voice oily with negotiation. They offered half. We declined. By Friday, they caved, agreeing to pay in full, under one condition: we sign a non-disparagement clause. My mother's lips curved into a cold smile as she drafted the reply. Clause applies to public interviews and publications only. Private conversations and legally obtained recordings are exempt. They signed, and just like that, their threats evaporated. Daniel sent me one final email. Subject line: "I'm sorry." The message was long, full of excuses. I didn't know they'd do that. I thought it wouldn't go that far. I thought you'd bend a little. I love you. I wanted us to work. I read it once, then deleted it. Because here was the truth I couldn't ignore. You don't get to love someone while silently watching them be dismantled. You don't get to stay neutral in a war your family wages against the person you claim to cherish. Still, some nights the grief crept in. I'd wake at 3 a.m., heart racing, imagining what would have happened if I'd gone through with it. I saw myself in Carol's kitchen, apron tied, walking Bella at dawn, handing over envelopes of cash while Daniel sat silent at the head of the table. The image made me shiver. Better the silence of my own apartment than the suffocating chatter of that future. Rachel, ever the provocateur, played the recording for friends at parties, each time announcing, "My sister dodged a bullet." She turned my humiliation into legend, and strangely, that helped too. The story became armor instead of shame. And slowly I began to breathe again. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't done testing me. Because one October afternoon, while reviewing a new case intake list at the office, a familiar name appeared on the screen. Lucas. We had gone to law school together. He'd been in my study group, my sparring partner in torts. We hadn't spoken in nearly 10 years. And just like that, the past cracked open, letting something unexpected slip through. When Lucas walked into the conference room, I almost forgot how to breathe. 10 years had passed since law school, but the shape of him was the same. Sharp suit, steady presence, that familiar way he looked at people like he was measuring not their words, but their silences. "You got taller," I said, my attempt at levity. "You got famous," he replied. His grin was wry. "My cousin sent me a clip of your wedding video." I groaned, pressing my forehead into my palm. "Please tell me you're not about to quote it." "I won't," he said, still smirking. But between the legal takedown and the exit dress, that was iconic. Something loosened in my chest. With Lucas, there was no pity, no condescension. Just amusement, respect, and a spark of something I hadn't realized I missed. We worked on the case together for 6 weeks. He'd gone into corporate law, M&A, international finance, the kind that came with astronomical retainers and soul erosion. Yet beneath the polish, the same fire burned. He still challenged everything I said, still argued for sport, still raised one brow when I contradicted him. And God help me, I loved it. One night, after a particularly brutal arbitration that we somehow won, we ended up at a quiet bar near the harbor. I was sipping scotch when he leaned across the table and asked, "Do you ever think maybe the real tragedy isn't when something ends, but when it almost begins?" I stared at him, pulse quickening. "Are you asking me on a date or quoting your therapist?" "Both," he said, and I laughed harder than I had in months. We started slow. Dinners, museum nights, a weekend in Cape Cod where he insisted on carrying my case files, even though I warned him I'd work through half the trip. He asked my dad for permission to sit at his poker table. My sister ran background checks on him for fun. My mother invited him to Sunday dinners and waited to see if he reached for his wallet when the check arrived. He did. A year later, he proposed, not on one knee, not with grand gestures. We were on the couch, exhausted from depositions, Chinese takeout containers scattered on the coffee table. He handed me a ring box, like it was another exhibit in a case. "If you're willing," he said softly, "I'd like to be the one on your side when the next storm hits." I didn't cry. I just said, finally. We married quietly in the Boston Public Garden. No guests, no orchestra, no speeches, just vows, papers, and a photographer we found on Craigslist. The next day, we went back to work as if nothing monumental had happened, except everything had. 2 years later, on a spring afternoon, we sat on a picnic blanket in the park, while our daughter, Grace, chased bubbles across the grass. She had Lucas's curls and my side eye, fearless and loud, laughing like she'd invented joy. I watched her, heart full in a way I never thought possible. Lucas nudged me with a bottle of water. "You're staring," he said. "I'm thinking dangerous," I murmured, about how close I came to giving it all away. "You mean the dog walking arrangement?" His smirk was teasing. "Exactly. And the rent, and the beagle." He leaned back on one arm, eyes glinting. "Would have been tragic. I would have lasted 2 days before setting fire to their living room rug." I laughed, shaking my head, until my breath caught. Across the park, I saw him. Daniel. He was holding the hand of a woman with kind eyes. They had a baby strapped in a carrier, a toddler toddling along with a juice pouch. They looked fine, peaceful, ordinary. He saw me. Our eyes locked for a second. I nodded once. He nodded back. Nothing more. Lucas noticed. "Friend of yours?" "Ghost," I said quietly, "from a different life." He didn't press. He just reached out, laced his fingers through mine, and pulled me close. Grace tumbled onto the blanket, giggling. "Mommy, I won!" she shouted, arms outstretched to claim victory over the soap bubbles. "You did," I told her, drawing her into my arms. "You always do." And I meant it. I didn't get the wedding I planned. I didn't wear the dress I bought. I didn't become the wife someone else had in mind. But I found my family, on my own terms, in my own time. And nothing, not a beagle, not a $3,000 rent invoice, not a single demand dressed as tradition, would ever take that from me. Because the greatest vow I ever made wasn't spoken in a garden or written in a contract. It was the silent promise I made to myself the day I walked out of that bridal suite. I will never again give away my freedom to someone too weak to protect it. Grace wriggled free, running back toward the bubbles, and Lucas leaned in, his voice warm against my ear. "You won too, you know," he whispered. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe it.